All right, and we're live. Starting a little bit earlier than I announced in my post that I think was liked by 3 individuals, so maybe it doesn't matter that much that I'm starting earlier than I announced, but yeah, starting early. Got off work earlier than I anticipated. Just waiting for people to get in here. Waiting. Hello, whoever just hopped in here. Hello, how are you? Not a rhetorical question. I really want to know. Tell me in the chat. How are you doing? Speaking of chat, I'm going to open up the chat. Live chat. Another view says, "Sup, playa?" Not much, man. How you doing? The only viewer in my stream. You should feel good about that. You should wear that with honor, being the only viewer in my stream. It's like a badge of pride. Still nothing. Only one viewer. Yeah. Doing well. Bought an intro to political science book and want to get into the basic principles. Okay. To each their own. I have a deep dislike for anything even remotely related to politics, so I can't say that I share the same interest, but I guess in a way the pursuit of any kind of knowledge is a good thing, so I can't really hate on you for that. We all have our own opinions, preferences, likes and dislikes, and I respect that. Still waiting on more people to show up. It's always a dilemma when you start a live stream and you're waiting for people to show up, because it's like, how long do you wait? You know, you can either wait a long time for a number that you may never reach, or you can start talking about really interesting or really important stuff, and then everybody who comes in later is going to miss it. Always a dilemma. I suppose big streamers who have huge audiences and they just start flooding in as soon as the streamer goes live, I'm sure those kind of people don't really have that same dilemma. But another view says, "Nice talk with Dave Explains. Was interesting to watch." Cool. Yeah, that was kind of a surprising sort of interview. You know, I kind of just reached out to him and, you know, asked when, you know, if he wanted to do kind of an interview sort of thing, talking mostly about him. He says yes, and, you know, he asked when I think I'll be available, and I'm like, well, you know, I can go pretty much anytime. I could even do tonight. And he's like, all right, let's do it tonight. So luckily there's like a 3-hour difference. Like, you know, he's in California, I'm in South Carolina, so, you know, if it hit my 10 o'clock is his 7 o'clock, and that's exactly when we recorded it. We recorded it at 7 p.m. Pacific time, 10 p.m. Eastern time. So yeah, definitely. I think that was a pretty good conversation. So yeah, hopefully it's the first of many. Might be able to collaborate in the future. I don't know. I also have a couple of other sort of collaborative things in the works. I don't want to give away too much about them, but some very exciting stuff with some very prolific and very talented chemistry YouTubers. Gonna be cool. Yeah, I mean, I have very little to talk about. Like, there's not a whole lot of, you know, crazy or interesting stuff that has happened over the last week. I've just been working I've been working so much. I've been working a lot around my house especially. I spent literally all weekend last weekend. And by the way, last weekend, I had a 3-day weekend. I had the Friday before 4th of July. That was a paid holiday for me at my job, which is why I was streaming on Thursday of last week instead of Fridays, because I usually like to do the stream at the end of my work week, on my way home from work. But yeah, I've just been busting my ass to get my house projects done. I spent all 3 days of that 3-day weekend, literally all day. Any time that I didn't spend going to the bathroom or eating was spent working, or sleeping, was spent working on my shower. And I got a lot done, but there's still quite a bit left to go. So I was a little bit disappointed that I couldn't finish it last weekend. And of course, it's really, really hard to do anything on weeknights because, I get home, it's kind of late, you have to set things up, mix your mortar and everything. It just takes a long time. And, my toddler is usually really, she tends to get a little bit more moody at night than she does in the morning. Like this morning, for instance, my daughter woke up just, on the right side of the crib mattress. She woke up and was just so happy to be alive. And she woke up before I left for work, so I was able to sort of change her diaper as soon as she got up. I made her some breakfast, and yeah, she's just a very pleasant person to be around in the morning, and also to a large degree at night. It's just, she's even more pleasant to be around in the morning. So the bottom line is that, doing my house projects at night on weekdays is kind of a pipe dream. Not a whole lot gets done. So speaking of projects, I'm about to head over to the Home Depot. Got a couple of things to pick up. I'm going to pick up some grout. I bought some grout from Lowe's, but I'm actually going to exchange, or to return the grout that I got from Lowe's and buy fresh grout from Home Depot, because Home Depot also has a matching color of caulk. C-A-U-L-K. And so I want to have that caulk to match the grout when I go to, grout everything and caulk the inside corners and everything when I finally finish up my shower. So I'm going to go to Home Depot, pick up a couple of things, and then head home. In fact, I think I'm going to start hitting the road. But yeah, like I was saying before, I don't have a whole lot to talk about, so I would really appreciate it if you guys have anything to talk about, because I would love to get some sort of content to discuss, because, things are kind of slow, at least from a YouTube point of view. The reason why I haven't really done much with my YouTube channel over the last couple of weeks is because I have been super busy trying to finish up these house projects. The goal is to have them all completely finished long before my second daughter arrives, which would be, the due date is October 7th. So, but, I understand that making educational videos is important, and it's also fun. I enjoy doing it. So I'm going to try my best to carve out some time over the weekend to make some educational content. I actually have my next video in the works. I have the script written. I have a pretty good idea of how I'm going to do all the the delivery and the images and the all the post-production stuff, the animations, everything. So it's in progress. I'm just I'm asking for your patience because it's just, it's hard to find 2 free minutes to rub together. But yeah, so that's why I titled this stream "Next Educational Video Coming Soon, Promise," because I'm trying to get in a better habit about uploading. And also, when you make promises, it's it kind of puts the pressure on you to keep those promises. So by promising all of you guys that my next educational video is coming soon, that's gonna light the fire under my ass to actually deliver on that promise. But soon is kind of a murky term, right? If I say soon, I could mean soon within the next month or soon within the next couple of days. So I give myself a little bit of wiggle room in my promise by saying the word soon. So, but I really, my goal is to carve out at least an hour over the weekend to shoot, and then over the course of hopefully the next couple of days of next week, I would like to, have the editing finished. That's my goal. Whether or not I'm going to accomplish it, I have no idea, but that is my goal. So somebody just typed something in the chat, and I'm about to hit a red light, so I'll be able to read it. Let's see. Where are you? He says, I understand you're slammed with so much. I'm impressed you can still find time at all for your channel. Yeah. I mean, I'm just kind of accustomed to being busy all the time. Like the last job that I worked for the last, I worked at the same job for a startup defense contractor for about 3.5 years. And over the course of those 3.5 years, there was always more tasks to do than there were time to do them. And sometimes that can sort of feel overwhelming and paralyzing, but it also kind of it kind of just gives you like these fresh new challenges, on time management and trying to keep that mindset of how can I make this more efficient. Like I definitely learned how to flex that muscle from doing that kind of work. I don't know why these people just stopped as if they had a stop sign when they don't have a stop sign, so I don't know what's going on. Anyway, so yeah, I'm just used to having more on my plate than I can handle with the time that I have. I'm just used to being behind on everything all the time, and like I said before, that can sort of feel like paralyzing and overwhelming, and it can kind of usher in this sort of feedback loop of you're overwhelmed, and then because you're so overwhelmed, you don't do the tasks that you need to do, and then now there's more to do, and now you get even more overwhelmed, and the cycle just repeats itself. So I've definitely been there, but to me, having more tasks to do than you have time to do them is better than having more time to do tasks than you have tasks to do. I don't like just sitting around. I don't like being bored. I don't like feeling ineffective. I don't like feeling unaccomplished. I don't like feeling disposable. I don't like feeling useless. So, and I kind of have to deal with that though, because at work, at my current job, things have been pretty slow because a lot of our customers have shut down because of the coronavirus. And as a result, there's not a whole lot of work to go around. I'm thanking my lucky stars that I haven't been laid off. I haven't been furloughed. But at the same time, I have to sort of create things around the lab and around the office. I have to sort of, find stuff to do. And, most of the time, the stuff that I end up doing has very little to do with my job title or with the job description of what I was hired to do, and that can be pretty frustrating. Like I was asked by my boss to thoroughly clean our laboratory, and our laboratory hasn't been thoroughly cleaned. You can tell it hasn't been thoroughly cleaned in a very, very long time. And so it was a lot of work to do, and so I'm always willing to take on challenges and things like that. Like, okay, yeah, like I'll turn this place around. Like I'll make it so that you can eat off of every surface, not literally, but so I clean up the whole lab top to bottom. It takes me a couple of weeks, to clean it properly. I mean, I'm doing everything. Like, here's a little trick for those of you who might work in laboratories. If you take just a little dab of mineral oil and you put it on like a big paper towel or like one of those large Kimtech wipes, those laboratory wipes. They have the little ones that come out of the green box, and they have the big ones that come out of the blue box. If you take a little bit of mineral oil on one of those and you just, start use that and start kind of buffing the lab benchtop. If you have like one of those lab benchtops that's like the black sort of phenolic resin, I think most laboratory benchtops are like that. Then it'll make that benchtop shine like a super shiny, dark black and it'll make it look really, really good. I think that's part of the reason why my boss was so impressed, because I made the bench tops nice and shiny. So any challenge that's in front of me, I always try to like own it. I always try to be like, you know what, I'm just gonna make this challenge my bitch. Doesn't matter what it is. But at the end of the day, it can be a little bit discouraging that it has nothing to do with my education. It has nothing to do with my job title, and it has nothing to do with my job description. So, but it's all good. I'm sure at some point these things will blow over, and we'll get back to normal. I can only hope. Can only hope. So, hello, whoever just hopped in here. How are you? Definitely desperate for topics, so if you want to throw up anything in the chat to talk about, I would thoroughly appreciate it. I don't want to just try to invent things to talk about when there's nothing. I don't want to fill the air with useless banter. I'd rather talk about something important, something cool, something of substance, something that you guys are interested in, all three of you. One of these days I'll get my numbers up. But until then, we're just spending time like we're sitting at a dinner table or something. It's a very intimate setting. That's how I choose to think about it. If anybody has any questions, I would love to hear them. Don't even have to be about chemistry necessarily. Have you guys seen this Wayfair thing that's going on? It was trending on Twitter, and I saw one of the Facebook groups that I'm in, someone posted about it. For those of you who don't know, Wayfair is I guess they're like a furniture dealer, like a furniture, company that sells furniture online. And somebody noticed that, and again, this is all like alleged, it could have been, this could have been fabricated. I don't know to what degree this has been authenticated, but apparently somebody was looking on Wayfair and they saw like these storage cabinets that were insanely overpriced, like over $10,000 for a storage cabinet that, tops is probably worth a couple of hundred. And these storage cabinets, not only were they like super overpriced, like $10,000, $12,000, $15,000, but they were also given strange names. And the names happened to match up with the first names of children who are missing. And these weren't names like, Dave and, Tommy and Brittany and really, really common sort of names that you hear all the time. These names were like very like unique sort of names that you never see anywhere else, like Zamira, or like, I don't know if that's one of them, but like you get the point, right? Like these were like very like unique sort of ethnic names that these storage cabinets were named, or like the names of these storage cabinets matched the names of these missing children. And so the implication is that Wayfair is somehow assisting in some sort of illicit child trafficking ring, which is a terrible, terrible thought. I hope it's not true. I mean, I'm not going to be naive and tell you that I don't believe any human trafficking exists. I accept that it exists, and it's just an aspect of how off the rails some people can get sometimes, how fundamentally screwed up some people are. But, I hope Wayfair, this big furniture sales company, whatever, I hope they're not involved, because, yeah, that's just despicable. Absolutely despicable if that's true. Look it up. Or don't. You don't have to look it up. But if you want to learn more about what I'm talking about, look it up. Like, just look up, like, Wayfair, Wayfair, and then, like, missing children or something like that. It's all over Twitter. I'm sure to a lesser degree it's all over Facebook. And it's some pretty alarming stuff. Yeah, that sounds pretty messed up on both ends. I'll give her a quick Google. Yeah, I think it's worth a Google. I mean, although I don't know. I mean, some people are pretty clever, though. I mean, you know, someone could have made this stuff up. I don't know why somebody would target Wayfair specifically. I don't know. Actually, I kind of do know, because apparently, like, Wayfair supplied furniture, like beds or something like that, to ICE, the immigration control, or I can't remember what the ICE acronym stands for, but basically the agency or the entity in the government that enforces immigration law. But yeah, so maybe that's why somebody targeted Wayfair. I mean, somebody who has a bone to pick with somebody who does business with ICE would certainly have motive to go after Wayfair and spread some bogus story about them. But I am interested to see, though, how it develops, though. I really am. Interesting stuff. So I'll probably stay on here for about another 10 minutes or so. Like I said, my weekend, I've got a lot of work ahead of me. I'm picking up some grout. I'm picking up some caulk. The wife just texted me asking me if I can pick up some Swiffer wet jet solution. So I'm gonna get that too. If they sell it here, I'm pretty sure they sell it here at Home Depot, but I don't know. So yeah, I've got a lot of work ahead of me. That's why I started the stream early, and that's why I'll be finishing fairly early too. But anyway, damn, dude just drove right through the parking lot, like laterally. Wow. People are pretty bold, man. Pretty bold. Yep. I was kind of hoping that somebody would ask me what my next educational video would be about, so I'll just answer that question even though nobody asked it. My next educational video is going to be basically sort of like a part 2 or a continuation to my electronegativity video. It's going to be about the categories of nonpolar covalent, polar covalent, and ionic bonds as a function of differences in electronegativity between the two bonded elements. So you take the electronegativity difference between two bonded elements, and that's going to help you predict what type of bond would form between them: nonpolar, polar covalent, or ionic. So that is what to expect for my next video. Definitely a lot of ideas bouncing in my head about how I'm going to present that. I've got a full script written. Shouldn't take too long for me to shoot. But of course, you know, shooting is the easy part. It's all the editing stuff that's really time consuming. Really time consuming. That's why, you know, I think most of my content, like the vast majority of my content, has been shot in a single, like, continuous take. You know, I don't do any, like, for most of my content, I haven't done any jump cuts or anything like that. It's just been me talking continuously as if I was in front of you in a classroom or something like that. The downside to that, well, first of all, the upside to that is that kind of video is much easier to edit. You don't have to chop things up and space things appropriately, and you know, it's just easier to edit a video that has no jump cuts. The downside is a video without jump cuts will inevitably take much longer than a video with jump cuts, especially for someone like me. I am not very eloquent. I do not speak very well. I have a lot of ums, I have a lot of likes, I have a lot of you knows. I use those a lot in my speech with people. And I think I've gotten better. I think I've gotten better at talking continuously since I started my YouTube channel. I think The more you talk, the better you're going to get at talking. But I'm not very good at it. I don't consider myself very good at it. And I also have noticed that some people seem to be naturally better at it than others. Of course, you can work on it, you can become more proficient, but based on my observations, it seems like when it comes to speech and eloquence, being able to talk fluently without using any ums or stuttering, we do not all start out at the same place on the starting line genetically. Some people are just genetically predisposed to communicate better than others, which sucks. I wish we were all sort of born equal and, we all started at the same starting line, right? If you are watching a track and field race and people aren't starting out at the same place on the starting line, some people just start several steps ahead of others, then that sucks because that's not a fair race, right? But unfortunately, Mother Nature isn't super fair with genetics. And some people start out having been dealt a really, really good hand by Mother Nature. And some people start out being dealt a not so good hand by Mother Nature. Although one could make the argument that given the extremely astronomically highly unlikely likelihood of any of us existing, that we all have sort of won the ultimate lottery, because the chances of you or I being born, given how many sperm cells there are and how many egg cells there are, I don't want to get too graphic here, but given the likelihood that your parents happen to fall for each other, that my parents happen to fall for each other in a world with billions of people, the odds of you being born or of me being born, regardless of what genetic advantages or disadvantages that either of us may have, the odds of either of us being born are super, super, super low, even lower than winning like a Powerball jackpot. For those of you who aren't in the United States, Powerball is like this lottery that's for a lot of money, but the chances of winning it are extremely low. So whenever I consider people who aren't very genetically blessed compared to their peers, sometimes I remind myself, well, hey, at least they're alive. Me, myself personally, I think my genetics are pretty decent. To whatever degree intelligence is genetic, I think I'm slightly above average on that front. Physically, I'm not obese or anything like that. I don't have a genetic predisposition to just crave more food, which would make me more obese. When I do exercise religiously and consistently, I can build muscle fairly quickly. But I'm not genetically perfect. I have a skin problem. I don't know if you can see it, but you see this watch? It's made of wood. And you might think, oh, that looks pretty cool. Well, if you think that's cool, you're welcome to get one. They're only like $30 on Amazon. I got one as a gift from my daughter. Well, really my wife, but yeah, I have a skin problem. I can't wear metals. Metals cause my skin to just flare up, and that's not anybody's fault. It's just genetics. It's just how it happened, and it'll be that way for my entire life. There are other problems that I have that are caused by genetics that are pretty personal. Maybe I'll get into them in a future stream or a future video, but yeah, I think I overall have decent genetics, but not perfect. Certainly not perfect. I also which was sort of the beginning of how this topic was brought up. I'm not the best communicator. I'm not the best. And it's amazing, like when you see somebody who's just really, really, really good at communicating, who's really eloquent, who can just speak over and over and over again, using a big vocabulary without any ums or stuttering. And I have met people like this. My organic chemistry professor, I did my research under him when I was an undergrad, and he was able to just rattle off all these lessons and facts and complicated relationships that would, if I tried to do the same thing, I would get all tongue twisted. I would stutter. I would go, I would go like, I would go, if I tried to teach these concepts to people. But he's able to do it flawlessly. Now, he's a tenured academic who's, I believe, in his late 50s or even early 60s. But, so he's kind of got more game than I do. He's got more experience than I do. But it's always impressive for me, especially, for like someone like me. I like to, shoot videos. I like to try to talk in front of a camera. For someone who has that skill of being able to talk well without stuttering, without anything like that, I'm always super impressed by that. Okay, so let me check the chat. Where did you go to school? I went to college at the University of Central Florida in Orlando. Yep. I had gotten accepted to UF, actually, which is by most measures a more prestigious school than UCF. But I decided to go to UCF mainly because that's where my girlfriend was. She was 1 year ahead of me. She graduated 1 year earlier than I did. She attended UCF, and being that I didn't really know what I wanted to do with my life, I decided to follow her. And I think it worked out because I ended up marrying her. She's my wife now, so that's right, I married my high school sweetheart. Pasta Recoverer asked the question, hi, can you recommend a chem book for a layman? I mean, I think, all of the general chemistry textbooks do a pretty good job. There was one that I was assigned to read back in high school, and it was called The Periodic Kingdom, and it was pretty good. There's another one, I'm having trouble thinking of the name of it, but it's sort of like a history of chemistry, like how it started with alchemy and then eventually became chemistry. I think maybe if you Google, like, from alchemy to chemistry book, you might be able to find the title for it. But that's a pretty interesting read. Yeah, I think any general chemistry textbook, you can do a good job. And, most general chemistry textbooks, they actually have like these interesting facts sort of, sprinkled within them that are pretty interesting. For instance, my general chemistry book has a little blurb in there about how, insulin is the drug that diabetics use to keep their blood sugar under control. Insulin is something that diabetics lack. Normal people who aren't diabetic don't have any deficiency in insulin. Diabetics lack insulin. And it used to be that they would kill pigs specifically for the purpose of extracting insulin from pigs, and that's how they would treat diabetics. The problem is that pig insulin isn't exactly the same as human insulin, and so a lot of people had bad reactions to it. Well, eventually they came up with a way to synthesize insulin in a laboratory, but it was a very, very, very difficult and very laborious task, and the costs of production of insulin would have been too high for it to be profitable or marketable. Until eventually, some clever scientists, what they did was they found a way to open up the bacterial genome in Escherichia coli, or E. coli as it's commonly called. You may have heard of it by that name, E. coli. They open up this bacterial genome of E. coli, and they insert the gene for insulin production. into the bacteria, right? And so now the bacteria are producing insulin. And if you know anything about how bacteria grow, it's exponential. You know, you'll have 1, and then you'll have 2, and then you'll have 4, and then you'll have 8, and then you'll have 16, and then you'll have 32, and you have 64, and then, you know, you'll have, 128, and it'll just keep growing exponentially, right? And so that's how insulin is produced in an efficient, cost-effective way, is by inserting the gene for insulin production into the bacterial genome and allowing that bacteria to grow. And it's basically like farming insulin. It's pretty cool. So that is that's one example of a GMO, right? One example of a genetically modified organism, E. coli, that's been genetically modified to produce insulin for diabetics. So when people say, "Oh, I'm anti-GMO and this and that," it's like, okay, well, do you know any type 1 diabetics? Because if they know where their insulin's coming from, then I'm sure they're huge proponents of GMOs, because they're literally producing the drugs that they need. So a lot of the anti-GMO crap is just nonsense. Let's see. Diabetes is a modern disease. No, the heavy sugar junk food is so cheap. Everyone stuffed their faces and the body just can't take it. Another view says that's type 2. Yeah. So another view just explained it really, really well. So yeah, type 2 diabetes is like an environmentally caused disease, but type 1 is genetic. There's nothing that a type 1 diabetic did to cause them to have that disease. Like, that's not, it can certainly be exacerbated by choices, like, if you're obese and you're not watching your sugar intake and stuff like that. I feel like I can't get that image out of my head of Wilford Brimley going diabetes. But yeah, not all diabetes is lifestyle related. Although I will concede that most healthcare problems, I think, what is it, like 2/3, maybe like 70% of healthcare problems in the United States are lifestyle related and could have been avoided by exercising more, eating less, eating better, drinking less, smoking less, all that kind of stuff. So interesting stuff. Good discussion. I mean, I really kind of pulled this out of nowhere. I was trying to find something to talk about because I hadn't been doing anything other than just busting my ass working on my home projects, namely my shower. But I think it's going to look good, though. I got most of the tile up, including like a glass mosaic strip that goes around. I actually uploaded a picture of my current progress on my shower in my Discord. So if you want to go on my Discord and check it out, you're more than welcome to. Another view says, have you ever heard of the Heart Attack Grill? I just watched a new snippet on it, and it's pure gluttony baited to educate/mock obesity. Kind of disturbing, really. Yeah. I actually thought about eating there when I was in Las Vegas. There's a Heart Attack Grill right there on Fremont Street. Yeah, I mean, I could understand how some people might be upset by that. But you have to understand, like, maybe this doesn't apply to other heart attack grills, but Las Vegas is the epicenter for excess, right? Everything in Las Vegas is completely over the top. The architecture, you go there, like, everything's lit up, everything's big, everything's crazy, right? So it would make sense that Las Vegas would be home to a Heart Attack Grill, because that's kind of what Vegas is there for. It's there for just over the top excess. And also, as a matter of principle, if they want to open a restaurant like that, and there are people who want to eat there, and it's a voluntary situation with consenting adults, I have no problem with that at all. I mean, I guess I have a problem with it if these obese people who are clogging their arteries with pure fat are on my insurance plan or they have the same insurance company as me and they're in the same pool where I have to sort of pay premiums based on their problems. Just because of how insurance is structured, it's like, okay, maybe I would have a problem with that. But in general, I'm just in favor of freedom. I'm in favor of people just being free to make whatever choices they want. So if you want to open a place that serves like, you know, and they actually call them like the double bypass burger, the triple bypass burger, like those are actual menu items at the Heart Attack Grill. If they want to do over the top things like that, you know, and people want to eat there, then I really fundamentally don't have a problem with that transaction. Although I could understand people making the argument that, you know, well, I do have a problem with that because, you know, these people are going to, you know, they'll need an ambulance, they'll need a helicopter ride to the hospital, or they'll need, you know, to stay in the hospital for a week or so. They'll need all this work, all this equipment that's all going to be charged to the same insurance company that I'm paying for too. So I understand that argument, and I'm not, you know, I'm not refuting that argument, but I'm also saying that I think the more important principle is people should be free to do what they want to do. And that includes, you know, clogging their arteries. So, Kathy says shower looks great. Thank you, Kathy. Thank you for your support. Oh man, this project has whipped my ass, but you know, I'm not down yet. I'm still fighting. So. Damn, this is a pretty cool discussion. Wow, I was not, you know, based on the beginning of how the stream was going, I was not really expecting to have such a cool conversation with you guys. But, you know, now that I'm 42 minutes in and just about to end it, it's pretty cool. So thanks you guys for contributing to the discussion. You know, I don't want this to be just me monologuing into a camera. I want it to be a multiple party transaction. I want to talk to people who will talk to me and give me feedback, and vice versa. You know, anybody on here can bring up whatever topic they want, and we can have a nice civil, very important, civil talk about it. If anybody brings up anything that's even remotely controversial, then you will not hear any sort of belittling or name calling or anything like that from me. I will treat everyone completely civilly. Unless they start treating me like shit, in which case, once the gloves are off, I have no problem just owning you. Okay, maybe that's a little pompous, but yeah, when the gloves come off and I'm under attack, I will retaliate. But until then, we can be nice. Why is healthcare so expensive in the US? I would say mostly because of lack of imagination, and also because of government barriers and government intrusion into the field. So let me give you a sort of anecdote to frame what I mean. So Christmas Day 2016, I start coming down with strep throat. And I know it's strep because my dad had strep, and he tried his best to stay away from us, but I still ended up getting it. And his was a confirmed case by his doctors, right? So I had strep throat, right? And I knew it. It's Christmas Day and all the urgent care centers are closed, so I have to go to the emergency room, right? Which is extremely expensive. I was there for maybe 15 minutes and I had to pay like $300 for the visit, and that's like a copay. That's not all out of pocket. That's after the insurance company pays. And when I was there, at first they didn't want to give me the antibiotics because I guess the throat swab test that they did on me, you know, didn't show enough of a sign of strep. And I'm like, listen, like I'm feeling the symptoms. My dad has a confirmed case. And also I had a flight to catch that night. Christmas Day 2016, I got on a plane and flew out to Las Vegas for 6 nights. It's funny that Las Vegas comes up twice in the conversation. But, I have to go there for 15 minutes. I have to get the drugs. I have to go to another place to actually fill the prescription. And it ends up costing me all this money. Now, imagine the following scenario, right? Imagine I walk up to a Redbox type of machine, like those machines that rent out, DVDs and stuff like that basically were the mark to the end of video stores as we know it. I walk up to a machine like that, I swipe my insurance card or I swipe my driver's license, whatever, and it has a probe that comes out and swabs my throat, confirms that I have the illness, and then shows me how much it's going to cost. I swipe my debit card and it dispenses the antibiotics for me. I think modern technology would enable that to be a possibility, right? But why doesn't it happen? Well, think about all the barriers preventing somebody from inventing something like that. Think about all the barriers for somebody, like all the money that somebody would have to invest developing something like that, only to have it shut down by regulations. Insurance companies, another thing, insurance companies can't sell insurance across state lines. Why not? That would allow for more competition and for prices to drop. And if prices were lower, maybe we wouldn't need to, maybe our insurance premiums would be lower because we wouldn't have to charge everything to insurance, right? When you go and get an oil change for your car, you're not charging your oil change to your auto insurance company. Why not? Well, because the cost of an oil change isn't that expensive to necessitate charging it to your insurance company. You just pay for it out of pocket. It's no big deal, right? Insurance is like the basic idea of insurance is to be, insurance is supposed to be for exotic risk. It's supposed to be for things that are really devastating, but also really unlikely. That's the only way that insurance can work. And you're supposed to pay into it before you know whether you're going to be sick or not. You're hedging against an improbable outcome, right? So the other thing too is that companies are forced to accept people that have pre-existing conditions, right? And I understand this is dicey territory, but if your house is on fire and you don't have fire insurance, and then you call up the fire insurance company while your house is burning down and say, "Hey, quick, I need fire insurance," they're going to say, "No, that's not how it works. You're supposed to be paying into it before your house burns down." Right? Similarly, if you don't pay, if you're not paying your premiums before you get sick, and then you suddenly get sick and say, "Oh, I need health insurance. Government, please bail me out," and force the insurance company to accept me, even though I had the opportunity to buy insurance and chose not to. Well, what's that going to do? What's that going to do, right? If I don't have to pay, if I don't have to buy health insurance because I know that companies or that the companies are going to have to be forced to take me as soon as I get sick, then what's the whole point of having insurance? Do you see how that works? The other thing too is that doctors are afraid of malpractice. Malpractice insurance is really, really high because malpractice lawsuits can bankrupt doctors. And so that, those costs are passed on to people too. But, and then also, medical school itself. If medical school were cheaper, maybe doctors wouldn't have to charge so much because they wouldn't have to pay off all this debt, right? The less debt the doctors have to pay off when they graduate med school, the less they have to charge, and they'll still get the same amount of take-home money. Before the government was involved in healthcare, doctors, like healthcare was so cheap. Healthcare was like, doctors couldn't find a way to make enough money. That's how cheap it was before the government started sticking its nose in it. But what happens is when the government starts sticking its nose in it, the price of everything goes up for reasons that I just discussed. And then when the price of everything goes up, the government says, oh, well, this is why you need us to control the industry because prices are too expensive. It's like, no, it wouldn't have been so expensive if you didn't get involved in the first place. So anyway, that's a long rant. Let me pause that. We use taxes to pay and everyone is covered for everything. No approvals needed. You guys should demand it in my humble opinion. Yeah, I respectfully disagree with that. I respectfully disagree with that. You know, I just went to the dog park a few weeks ago. Well, it was more than a few weeks ago. It was a few months ago before all this corona nonsense. And this guy who happened to be from Winnipeg, Manitoba, was at the dog park visiting family, or actually, no, he wasn't visiting family. He had come to the States to get an operation for his leg. He had like one of those, like, I don't know how to describe it. It's like one of those big leg braces, you know, like one of those big leg braces that has like the round thing at either side of the knee. And so, you know, he came to the U.S. to get an operation on his leg. And I asked him about it. I asked him, like, your experience as a Canadian, how has it been? And he says, well, the healthcare is good when you get it, but, you know, you're going to wait a long time to get it. And so that's why, you know, if you're in any kind of critical pain or you need an operation now, you know, the norm is to travel south to the United States to do it. You know, if Canadians had the option to pay more in exchange for better services, I'm sure a lot of them would, but they don't because it's forced. The cat says for non-emergency. Yeah, okay. I mean, you know, we have, again, we have insurance companies here, right? We have Medicaid, which is like the government's sort of safety net for people who can't afford insurance. Yeah, I mean, in general, I just don't think it's acceptable to use taxation to fund, well, really anything. You know, I don't think it's acceptable to use violence, which is what taxation is. It's coercion. I don't think coercion should fulfill the needs of our society. I think we should find voluntary solutions to those problems instead of violent ones. So, yep. What else? Whoa, 6 viewers. Yeah. We willingly pay? What do you mean we willingly?
TikTok.
Whoops.
Might be ending.
Yeah, I mean, I willingly pay taxes too, so I don't end up in a cage. Just because somebody would pay willingly doesn't mean that it's not coercion, right? You know, if a man forces himself on a woman, that's not right, even if she would have at some point had sex with him voluntarily. Anyway, yeah, just because something would do something willingly doesn't mean that it's not coercion. You know, we all know what happens to you when you don't pay your taxes. We're talking. Oh, okay. So Athby, for those of you who are just entering, we're talking about. Somebody asked, you know, why is healthcare in the United States so expensive? And I believe that it's primarily because of lack of imagination, and more fundamentally from government interventions. Healthcare before the state was involved was extremely cheap, to the point where doctors had to find inventive ways to make enough money to live. Right? That's how cheap healthcare used to be. And then when the government gets involved, the price goes up. And then when people start to not be able to afford it, the government says, oh, look, you need us to solve this problem that we created in the first place, although they don't admit the fact that they created it in the first place. So, I guess we don't see eye to eye, but I see your point on taxes. Yeah, yeah. I mean, I'm happy to, if you ever want to have like an actual like, video debate about that, like I think that would be cool. And of course I would keep it civil, and I'm sure you would too. But yeah, I mean, if you take these principles of not having violence solve social and economic problems, if you take those principles and extend them out to see how far they go, you will eventually land on a stateless society. You will end up with a society without a government. And I think that that is sort of like an asymptote that is worthwhile to work toward. I mean, I'm not sure if logistically any civilized society now could actually get there, but I still think it's a good goal to work towards. I think we need to reduce the power of the government, and leaving the government in charge of one of the most important aspects of humanity, which is healthcare, given how the government handles education, given how the government handles the national debt, right? Given how the government handles currency, printing, borrowing, given all those things, I don't think it would be wise as a society to grant that power to the state. Just my opinion. So, I'm sorry, Pasta Recoverer. You asked me a question and I didn't answer it. I got carried away. So yeah, let's change the subject. Pasta Recoverer says, sorry for repeating myself, but what's a cool chem experiment I can do with household reagents? Okay, so here's one thing you can do. It's maybe not necessarily chemistry, maybe it's sort of more physics, but I think it's like fluid dynamics. It's really cool. So what you do is you take some cornstarch and you put it in a bowl, okay? And you start adding a little bit of water to it at a time, just a little bit of water, mix it around, a little bit of water, mix it around, a little bit of water, mix it around. And if you're feeling festive, you can throw in your favorite food coloring. And this concoction is called oobleck, and it's a non-Newtonian fluid, meaning it's a liquid, and then as soon as you apply a force to it, it becomes a solid, it hardens up. And there's actually an episode of Mythbusters where where Adam Savage walked across a giant tub of oobleck. So again, cornstarch, water, get it to the desired consistency by adding water slowly in small portions to your cornstarch, mix it around, and eventually you'll get like a liquid that you can cut with a knife, or a liquid that you can roll into a ball. So that's pretty cool. So that's one example. Trying to think of other sort of household things. Here's another one. If you take red cabbage, okay? If you take some red cabbage from your local grocery store, chop it up, put it in a pot of water, boil it for 10-15 minutes, and then filter out the cabbage and let the liquid cool down, eventually you will end up with a liquid that is an acid-base indicator that will change colors based on the acidity or alkalinity of the environment into which that indicator is. So for instance, if you have this red cabbage juice, as it's called, and you pour some ammonia in it, or some lye, or something that's fairly basic, it will turn like a yellow-green color. But if you put something like acidic, like lemon juice or something like that in it, it'll turn more to like a reddish pink color, and then blue is sort of kind of like the neutral color. In fact, this is something that I've never talked about on my channel before. And I know other people are asking me questions, I want to answer them, but let me just go off on this tangent briefly. So my wife and I, we got married in 2015, and she was in charge of everything. The one thing that I was in charge of was the unity ceremony. And you know how like a unity ceremony, some people will, light candles, some people will mix sand together to symbolize their unity. What we did was a chemical reaction involving, you guessed it, red cabbage juice. So what we did, right, was we had this really tall 1 liter graduated cylinder, and it had a little tiny bit of lye, of sodium hydroxide, in the bottom. And we each had a beaker of this blue, it's called red cabbage juice, but it actually looks blue. It slowly turns red over time, right? So we each had this big beaker of blue indicator solution, and we both poured it in there, and as we both poured the blue stuff into the big graduated cylinder, it turned greenish yellow because it was in the presence of a base of sodium hydroxide. So we had this blue stuff, we poured in the graduated cylinder, it turns green, okay? Then what we did was we had some dry ice, and I took a hammer and I pounded some of the dry ice to get pieces that were small enough for my wife and I to both pick up. And we also had a pair of gloves. I put on one glove, she put on the other glove, and we both started dropping chunks of dry ice into the cabbage juice mixture. So what happens is dry ice, as you know, as you probably know, is solid carbon dioxide, CO2. And when you mix it with water, or, you know, in this case, cabbage juice, right, which is mostly water, you get a reaction that releases carbonic acid, okay, H2CO3. And as that carbonic acid is released, as more and more of that carbonic acid is released, the pH of the solution changes from basic to acidic. It slowly becomes less alkaline and more acidic. And that takes the indicator through a range of colors. So the indicator, it's like bubbling, you know, you see the smoke or the fog, you know, from the dry ice being given off. And, you know, it starts out like this yellowish green, and then it turns, you know, sort of like an aqua color, and then a blue color, and then like a red color, and then a pink color. And the symbolism was that, you know, we come together and then, you know, we sort of experience all these stages of life together as a married couple. And there were quite a few people who attended that wedding, and most of them said that was the coolest unity ceremony I've ever seen. So maybe I'll publish some photos of it on like Facebook or Twitter or something like that, maybe Instagram. Because yeah, we had a totally geeked out wedding. There was a lot of sciencey stuff there. Our wedding cake had like benzene rings and DNA double helices on it, because my wife was in forensic science. So we had like a chemistry / forensic science themed wedding. And it was pretty cool. It was pretty cool. Let's see. Oh, I wish I didn't have to go soon. Okay, so Ibrahim asks, when you were younger, did you have any interest in physics or biology? Yeah, totally. I majored in biology before I switched to chemistry. Yeah, I took an AP biology class my senior year in high school, and that really kind of turned me on to biology. And so I didn't really know exactly what to major in. So I was like, you know what, I really like this AP biology class, so I'll major in biology. And then, you know, so I started out as a bio major, and then as I started like taking my chemistry classes that were, you know, part of the biology sort of curriculum, I just started to like chemistry a lot more, and so I changed majors. So yeah, good stuff. But yeah, I like biology. I like biology a lot. It's good stuff. All right, well, listen, I think I need to get going now, a little late, but thank you guys so much for watching. Thank you for participating. Here, I'll get it out eventually, right? Thank you for participating in what has been a truly fun discussion. I would look forward to talking to you guys in the future. Again, thank you so much for your continued support. Next educational video coming soon, I promise. As the title suggests, it's going to be about polar, nonpolar, ionic bonds in the context of differences in electronegativity. Can't wait to upload it, and I can't wait to see what you think of it, and would love to read your feedback on it. All right, I'm rambling now. So last thing I'll say is if you'd like to, feel free to follow me on, I got Twitter, I got Instagram, I got Facebook. I have a Discord that I'm trying to sort of assemble and get people together. All of those links can be found in the banner on top, at the top of my channel page, on the bottom right-hand corner of that banner. So hit me up on all those platforms if you are interested, and I would love to hear from you soon. All right, take it easy. Bye.